Welcome to the Fantasy Football Fanatics podcast with your hosts Griffin Palmer, CJ Hickman, Jason Cabrera, and Ryan Mitchell.
What is up, everybody? Welcome to the show. This is Tuesday, September 19th. This is the Fantasy Football Fanatics podcast, the official podcast of thefantasyfootballfanatics.com. I'm your host, Griffin Palmer, joined as always by CJ the Hitman Hickman and Jason Cabrera. What is up, guys?
Hey, Griffin, what's up?
Oh, not much. A much more trying week of fantasy football this past week. Another historically low week compared to the averages of last season for touchdown totals across the board. So, I mean, as we get into our studs and duds category, which is coming up very soon, we're going to be talking for a very long time about a lot of people who crap the bed, as one way of putting it. So, yeah, a lot of duds, and we feel your pain, all you listeners out there. We've heard a lot of people that are complaining and asking, what do we do about player X? And, we'll do our best to tell you to pump the brakes. Take a deep breath. It is week 2. Everyone's playing divisional matchups right now. The offenses are still gelling, which, like I said in last week's show, it'd be great if these offenses had like a like a preseason or something, so they could really work these kinks out. But they just seemingly don't. So we'll get into all this. We're gonna do some fantasy therapy. We'll get through it as a group, and we'll keep on moving. The season is a long marathon, though it's only 16 games compared to baseball, I guess. But it's a long season. It's not a sprint. We'll get there. And even if you're 0-2, that is really still very, very easy to come back from. I would not jump off the bridge just yet. So that being said, let's move on and get to the show. As always, we have an amazing show for you guys today. Today we're going to be talking about our studs and duds and recap of week number 2. Of course, all of our top waiver wire targets for week number 3 and all the top headlines from around the league. So if that sounds like a lot, well, it is. So we're going to try and get through it all. Please make sure you guys subscribe wherever you're listening, on iTunes and Stitcher and YouTube and wherever. I mean, we'll come right to your pocket. It's a magical thing. You don't have to go looking for us. We'll come to you. It's really cool. You can follow the show on Twitter at the FF Fanatics. That's the easiest way to submit your questions and get breaking news in between recordings. I mean, half the things we're going to talk about today, we already talked about on Twitter. So if you want those, all those news updates, and you don't want to wait until Friday or Tuesday to hear about them, at the FF Fanatics. And of course, most importantly of all, you can support the show on Patreon at patreon.com/thefantasyfootballfanatics, where you'll get yourself a bonus episode every single week, along with many, many other perks, including guaranteed bonus answering and things of that nature. So cool stuff. Check it out, guys. I can't recommend it enough. Patreon.com/thefantasyfootballfanatics. Everyone over there seems to love it. It's a pretty good community, and it's growing. So with that, let's move into our warm-up, and we'll just talk very briefly. What was your main takeaway from week number 2? My main takeaway from week number 2 was simply that that Dallas defense, I think it's exactly what we thought it was. I mean, they showed up again and had a decent game against the Giants, but that was divisional. And if we're seeing anything from the Monday night game, they were helped by the fact that the Giants don't seem to know how to play football offensively at the moment. So I'm going to go and say that there was a serious blowout in favor of the Broncos. I mean, the Broncos are much better at home. We all know that. The Broncos defense is for real, and I'm not jumping. Everyone's like, oh, buy high on Trevor Siemian, go get Broncos. No, pump the brakes, guys. We talked about this all offseason. The Cowboys defense is going to be very, very bad. They overperformed last year. They lost a lot of key pieces going from last year into this year. I mean, they have a lot of problems, and Trevor Siemian and that offense was able to exploit those problems. They got an early lead. A lot of calls went their way. So I would just say, calm down, pump the brakes. It was a perfect meshing of scenarios. Though, I mean, hey, look good. Trevor Siemian, he's going to be one of your top quarterbacks. If you had him in your league, good chance you won your week this week. So we'll get to that. But I'm just saying, it don't overreact to one game. It's a small sample size. We're going to have to see a lot more before we start trying to buy high on Broncos players. What about you guys? Did you have anything that really stood out to you from week number 2?
Well, I mean, C.J. Anderson did really well in that game, too.
Yes, he did.
That's pretty good. But my game that I really enjoyed to watch, especially because I'm a fan of this guy, was Devontae Freeman. Devontae Freeman in the Atlanta and Green Bay game, he played really well. Falcons' offense was looking kind of stale to me in that first game against the Bears, but they came back and followed that up with a marvelous performance and just put the whooping on the Packers. So I really liked that game. It was pretty cool to watch.
There you go. Jason?
Well, you gotta love the Oakland Raiders just giving it to the Jets. I mean, that offense, and you expected this. I mean, you expected nothing less than a blowout victory from Oakland going to play the Jets, because the Jets are just not good. We know that, but they did absolutely that. They absolutely dominated the stat sheet. I mean, Derek Carr was crazy, 3 touchdowns. He had himself a very nice night, and of course, our guy Michael Crabtree. We'll talk about him a little bit later, but man, they balled out today. It was nice to see. And then the other thing I'll say, and I know CJ's going to love this, but that New York Giants offense is not at all who we thought they were going to be. So they need to figure out what they're doing out there, because there are too many drop balls out there. Eli Manning is picking himself up off the turf too often. I don't know what's going on, but the defense can't do it all by themselves.
No, that offense needs some serious time to gel. Again, if only they had a preseason to work on these things. Ah, man.
Well, they changed it when they took away. Well, yeah, I mean, when they took away that whole cutting down during the preseason, they changed it, and it's good and bad. Because it's good because teams can now get a better look at these younger players and see who they want to keep and all that. But it's bad, as you say, these offenses don't get a chance to get a rhythm yet. I mean. You even look at Atlanta. They look a little lackluster compared to what they should be doing. And you look at what New England did in Week 1. These teams need time to get in a rhythm, and they just don't have it anymore.
No, and I mean, not only that, the players aren't necessarily in game shape. I mean, it's a whole big problem. And then not having the systematic cuts is also making it a lot more difficult for these players to find a home on another team, because when it's just, a mass cut around the league, people get lost in the shuffle. So, I mean, on one hand, I get it and I support it, but on the other hand, there's a lot of shortcomings to this new strategy. So I both love and hate it at the same time. And I would like it a lot more if there was some way that we could get these starters to get some reps in. And I know injuries are the concern, and you know what? That's ever present. It is football, but on the other hand, these offenses are the Giants are just one of many exceptions, or many examples, I should say, around the league where you can tell there's just misfirings happening across the board. So this is why fantasy production tends to grow. This is why defenses tend to be much better at the beginning of the year, and then the elite ones kind of stay at that level, and the rest of them start to dip in the stat lines as offenses start to get better and start to gel. And of course, players start to get hurt as well, which also helps define the better teams. So all of this, we're getting off topic here, but it's all part of the preseason into the regular season, which has now been altered, and we'll see how that changes. And I'm very intrigued to see how the new CBA works out in a couple of years. But that's way down the line. We'll cover that in a couple of years when we get there. So that's a warm up. Let's move into our studs and duds. A lot of people's favorite category of the entire week, and it's because we get to vent, we get to relate. Everybody, especially when we get to the duds, just know you're not alone. We all felt these losses, but we have to start with your studs, your top performers of the week, and we'll start as always with the quarterback position. And of course, no surprise here, your number one quarterback on the week. It didn't take him long to climb to the top. Tom freaking Brady, 36.78 fantasy points. He went 30 for 39, 447 yards, 3 touchdowns. I mean, Tom Brady doing exactly what we thought he would do in a, he's playing angry. He lost week 1 at home in New Orleans against a bad defense in what we thought would be a real offensive shootout. The Saints, they did all right, but they couldn't keep pace with the Patriots here. I mean, it's Tom Brady. We all expected this. And you drafted him as a top 2, top 3 quarterback for a reason, and this is the production you were hoping for. I think we all agree with that. Yep. So let's move on to some of the more surprising. What happens when you plug him in at night? Oh, there you go. So, wow. So some of the more surprising top 3 finishes, and this is why I believe in streaming. Number 2, Trevor Siemian. Yeah, I wouldn't expect that, but hey, here he is. 30.64 fantasy points. He went 22 for 32, 231 yards, so not the best total there, but here's where he made his pay. 4 touchdowns. 4. Holy crap. I mean, that'll get you up on the leaderboard any given week. And then, of course, Carson Wentz coming in at number 3 with 28.82 fantasy points, 25 for 46, not super efficient, 333 yards and 2 touchdowns. Also had another 55 yards rushing, so I honestly didn't expect that out of him. So kudos to your quarterback over there, CJ.
Yeah, unfortunately, he had to do it. I mean, coach doesn't want to run the ball, so that's why he had to keep throwing it.
Well, actually started doing that.
Yeah, I mean, nobody else is running the ball, so I guess Carson Wentz had to do it. And we'll get into some of those guys pretty soon in the duds category, so we'll save that for then. Let's move on to the running back position, where my guy, C.J. Anderson. You know, you brought up Michael Crabtree, and now here's C.J. Anderson. These are two guys that I've been very high on for years, and I got in all 12 of my leagues, I did not get a single share of C.J. Anderson or Michael Crabtree. I hate everything, and here they are, top performers at each position. C.J. Anderson goes out there, puts up a career week, 27.4 fantasy points, 25 attempts. Holy crap. 118 yards, 1 rushing touchdown. Also had another 36 yards receiving for another receiving touchdown as well. Massive performance. He looked great. He looked amazing. He looked healthy. This is the way I truly believe C.J. Anderson is. He is this caliber of player. I think if he can stay healthy, he is a top 5, top 10 type talent. But that whole staying healthy thing, that's kind of the counter argument. He has never played a full season, and he is running with reckless abandonment. I assume that it's just a matter of time before he gets hurt again, which is sad and morbid, but probably true. I mean, are you guys... Now, I know you guys are not as high on C.J. Anderson as I am, so I'm very intrigued to hear your view on C.J. Anderson. How would you approach him going forward for the rest of the season after this career week that he just had?
I make it a habit not to approach him.
There you go. That's my point.
Hey, blind squirrel finds a nut every now and then. Trevor Siemian was number 2 of quarterbacks in the league this week. Okay, so yeah, every now and then you're going to see a stat line like this out of C.J. Anderson. But again, doesn't stay healthy, not consistent. This is not his style. So it's surprising to see him up here. Not that surprising because it can happen. Things like this can happen. That is a very good team in Denver. But do I expect to see this to become a normal thing? Absolutely not.
Do you sell high on him then, Jason?
Say again?
Would you sell high on him now then?
I don't have him, so I wouldn't sell him at all.
No, hypothetically. Obviously you don't have him. I know you don't have him. You don't like him.
I didn't draft him. I wouldn't draft him. So it's not even a hypothetical for me because I wouldn't have him on my team.
Thank you for completely dodging the question. CJ, what are your thoughts?
Okay, so here, my mindset going into the drafts, I was really concerned about his health. I mean, because he's been known for getting injured a lot. But these last couple of games, what I've been seeing, and I kudos to the Denver bringing in Jamal Charles because I think that really helps him out so he doesn't shoulder the load because they got a kind of like Atlanta Falcon-esque type offense going on there when it comes to their running backs. So they're running both of them, and they're both effective. These last couple of games, his stock is up in my mind. And if I'm at need at running back, and like if I got like an Isaiah Correll, and you probably might be a little concerned about what's going on with him, and you could be able to work a deal to go get a C.J. Anderson, I'm not opposed to that. I mean, he's been looking good. And as far as what's going on in that offense, what they want to be able to do to help out Trevor Siemian is to run that ball. And C.J. Anderson has been getting the opportunities, getting the looks, and he's been taking advantage of them.
So, again, if you had him on your team, would you be holding him, hoping for more good performances? I mean, you drafted him to be potentially a starter or a flex option, or do you sell high after this big week?
For me right now, I'm a little hurt on wide receiver. So for me, I probably would hold on for him just a little longer, maybe a couple more weeks. If he continues to put these performances up, then I'm selling high, and then I'm probably gonna go get me a wide receiver, low wide receiver 1 or wide receiver 2, and then do that.
Yeah, I think it falls down to just your level of trust and belief in C.J. Anderson because I think that, honestly, there might not be a better time to sell high on him than right now if you're not a believer because he has had a very good week this week, obviously. And, he not a great week 1, but he did have 81 yards. I mean, so good. He just didn't score a touchdown. So, I mean, you could, in theory, see him go for pretty high. I mean, in standard, actually, I could just say in any league because I guess PPR changes. But in standard scoring leagues, he is the number 4 running back on the season through 2 weeks. So, I mean, you could, in theory, really flip him for some decent help at wide receiver if you needed it. Especially, you have these teams and these players out there who are ready to pull all of their hair out. They're 0-2. They're ready to make wholesale changes and just really try and do whatever they can to really rectify their teams, right the ships, whatever the case may be. You might be able to get a king's ransom for C.J. Anderson right now, especially if you're not a believer in him. Or if you're like me and you believe that he can keep this production up, I mean, then you can keep him. him. But I like you guys, my fear is injury. He's never done it, and I assume that sooner or later he will be hurt. So if you get the right offer, if I got the right offer for him, if I was lucky enough to have him in any leagues at this point, I'd be looking to probably move him. I'd at least have him on the trading block to see what offers I got. So that's my advice, at least at this point. Next guy on the list is Todd Gurley, looking like his 2015 self, which is a welcome change. 23.6 fantasy points. Only took him 16 attempts to go 88 yards and a touchdown. Also caught, and this was what I really, really like to see, 3 for 4 for 48 yards receiving and a receiving touchdown as well. And this was much improved. He averaged 5.5 yards per carry, which I was really cautious. If you guys were here last week here in the Tuesday show of after week 1, talking about how he was good, but he had an amazing matchup and he only managed 2.1 yards per carry. So this 5.5 this week is a very welcome sight. This is what we hope to see, and hopefully he can keep this going forward. And I'm actually really excited about Todd Gurley because I was really thinking, what do I do? Do you move him? Do you hold out? What's the ceiling? What's the floor? But, I mean, Sean McVay is seriously utilizing Todd Gurley in the passing game. I mean, 4 targets, I mean, that's a very high number compared to what he got last year, and he's been productive. He looked really good in open space. I mean, that he had some long runs out and catch after the run, got a receiving touchdown. So I mean, hey, he is doing very, very well. I'm excited about Todd Gurley going forward. What are your guys' thoughts?
Well, for me, I'm looking at Todd Gurley, and I think that his upside is going to be tied into what Jared Goff is doing. I really like Jared Goff's progress going into year 2. He's kind of looking like, and you can call me out on this if I'm wrong, but when I'm looking at it, he's looking like Brock Osweiler out there. You know what I mean? He's locking in on that one target, which is Cooper Kupp, which we like, but it costs him. And I like the fact that Todd Gurley is getting involved in the passing game, but I do believe his going forward, his production going to be able to increase and get more consistent is going to be tied into what Jared Goff does in this offense.
Jason, what are your thoughts? I think you were the lowest on Gurley going into the season out of 3 of us, weren't you?
I rose a little bit on him as we got closer, mainly because of McVay and the fact that they were going to change around that offense and do some good things. I still was a little pessimistic about his abilities, but he is doing very well. I mean, 5.5 yards per carry, that's excellent, and I did want to see him start getting more passes going his way. I do have shares of him in our keeper league. I came very close to dropping him before the draft and drafting a new running back, but I decided to hold on to him. Probably a good choice at this point. Overall, I like what I'm seeing out of him, especially as CJ has alluded to. Goff is still struggling a bit. He is playing better. I will say that. I will say that Jared Goff is playing better than I thought he was going to. And I think he's going to only improve, especially with this new offense around him and as he gets more comfortable with his weapons. But they're going to rely heavily on Todd Gurley. I expect this trend to stay the way it is as long as he stays healthy and as long as they can keep him from getting hit in the backfield and utilize him in the passing game.
I mean, there were a couple times he got hit in the backfield, and I was thinking, oh, here it is, 2016 all over again. But there were other times where he was bouncing off guys, and he got into the second level, making separation in space. I mean, he's showing serious flashes of what we expect to see out of him, though, I mean, he's going to have those plays. I mean, this team still needs a lot of pieces. They still need help on the offensive line, and they're still gelling. They're still adjusting to Sean McVay's offense. So, but I am excited about Todd Gurley going forward. I was, like I said, last week, really thinking, do I try to move him? But after what I've seen and his usage now, not just his production, but how he's being used in that offense, I'm starting to rise on him to the point where I'm thinking, you know what, I might want to ride out the season with Todd Gurley. So, we'll see how it plays out. Of course, this is just week 2. Let's move on to our third stud of the week from the running back position, which is Ty Montgomery. 23 points. I mean, 10 attempts. Not a lot of attempts. He only got 35 yards, but he did get a touchdown. He also went 6 for 7 in the receiving game, 75 yards, and another receiving touchdown. That's where he made his money. I mean, look, Ty Montgomery, he is thicker. He looked a lot better than he did last year. And injuries we'll get to that. Jordy Nelson and Randall Cobb really required him to step his game up. So, I mean, the opportunity was there. I still don't think I'm buying Ty Montgomery season long, but I think he does have a stranglehold on that job now, where I thought it was going to be kind of a split or his job to lose. I now think that he is very, very concretely in that starting role until he goes down. I mean, Jamal Williams I'm fading on very much at this point. What are you guys' thoughts real quick?
Yeah, I would agree with that. I mean, I still am concerned about Ty Montgomery. I like his ability, I really do, but as a starting workhorse, it scares me a little bit. So I still am kind of cool on Ty Montgomery. If he can sustain this for a couple of weeks, then great. If not, then yeah, I'm not even looking his way.
I mean, for me, I own him in a couple leagues, and as far as, I mean, he was riding my bench for a while, but I think he's a matchup-based guy. I mean, I like when him and Rodgers are flowing together. I mean, he kind of got worked out of the offense a little bit. I mean, they were getting behind, and it was just kind of gone after like the third quarter to me just watching it. But I like his involvement in the offense, and if you're an owner of him, I mean, I'm cool with keeping him as my running back too. I'll put him in my flex.
Yeah, well, I mean, we'll see how it plays out. Let's pick up the pace a little bit and get through these wide receivers. Of course, at the top, no surprise here. We already talked about it. Michael Crabtree, 26 points, 6 for 6, so perfect catching, 80 yards, 3 touchdowns. Oh, man. Look,
that's my guy.
If you guys listen to us here, we have been high on Michael Crabtree all offseason. So if you're lucky enough to have rostered him, which unfortunately, like I said, I was not, and I hate sometimes the fact that, this is why I actually, one of my leagues, I play in just a standard NFL.com league, so I know that, not necessarily anyone in there is me playing against any one of you two jokers, or playing in a league where I know that half or more of the league is actually listening to our podcast, getting our advice, because I can never get these guys. But yeah, Michael Crabtree, we've been high on him. He's putting up good work. I expect this to be the case. I think he's going to be the red zone weapon and a good PPR receiver for them throughout the season. And I know you guys agree, right?
Yeah, man. It was tough.
There we go.
It was tough.
Now, last two guys, a little bit more surprising. Jermaine Kearse, 18.4 fantasy points. He went 4 for 5, 64 yards, 2 touchdowns. So, I mean, was this necessity or was this opportunity? Was this the matchup? How do you guys think that this ended up happening?
This was pretty interesting to me. I mean, of course, we don't want no parts of the Jets. So, I mean, somebody has to step up. We thought it was going to be Robbie Anderson, but, it clearly wasn't. So, I mean, Ron Kersey stepped up and made some plays. So, this is pretty surprising. I wouldn't jump on it, fantasy gold. No, let's wait and make sure it's gold. Let's pump our brakes on that one.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it really is. It's just, someone has got to catch passes for this team, And, I mean, if you look, that's basically what he did. I mean, 64 yards. That's nothing, and then 2 touchdowns. That's where he made his money. So, yeah, it really just comes down to matchup. It comes down to this happens to be the guy that works well against this defense. That could change every single week.
Yeah, I mean, it could. Robbie Anderson's there. I mean, Austin Sperry-Jenkins is coming back from injury. Obviously, they got Bilal Powell, Matt Forte who can catch the ball. So, I mean, look, the Jets are trying to lose every game. So, I mean, I think if Jermaine Kearse starts doing too well after a while, he might mysteriously wind up on injured reserve. Who knows? But, something to monitor, but I'm not rushing out to pick up any Jets player. So, yeah. But good week. If you had him, which I highly doubt that you did, I think he's only owned in a little over 1% of the leagues. So, I mean, kudos to you, but that's one deep league. Yeah, 1.5% of leagues he's owned in. So if you started him, kudos, but odds are you probably didn't. So let's move on to Emmanuel Sanders. Someone had to catch some of those 4 touchdown passes from Trevor Siemian, and Emmanuel Sanders hauled in 2 of them, 6 for 8, 62 yards, 2 touchdowns. We've already covered that game pretty extensively. Kudos to Emmanuel Sanders. I doubt he'll be a top 3 fantasy option for you every single week, but I mean, he has this upside for sure. Let's move on to the tight end position, where we start off with Rob Gronkowski. It only took him a little bit over 2 quarters to go 6 for 9, 116 yards and a touchdown before going down with injury. We'll talk about that more a little bit later on, but serious production. That's why you draft Gronk. Travis Kelce was next, 16.3 fantasy points, 8 for 10, 103 yards and a touchdown. And man, did he? I'm sorry to rub this in, CJ, but that was one impressive hurdle that he had to get that touchdown. He took 2-3 of your defensive backs with him. That was crazy. Yeah. And then Jason Witten for the second week in a row coming in at the number 3 spot. 11.9 fantasy points, 10 for 13 targets.
Look at this.
Look at this. Old man Witten getting it done in a year where nobody believed in him.
One.
97.
Can we run back the clock when you guys laughed at me when I put Jason Witten in my top 10 tight ends? And look at this guy. Good numbers.
I don't remember that happening. 97 yards and a touchdown. So Jason Witten currently is, let me confirm this. Yes, Jason Witten is currently the number 1 tight end in fantasy.
Wow, look at that.
Is this 2012? What's going on here? So, I doubt he sustains this pace, but I mean, who knows? With game script being the way it is and Jason Witten being a proven target and friend for the quarterback in Dallas, I mean, anything's possible. Mm-hmm. He's slow. Yeah. But, hey, he is efficient. He's got great hands, and he's a good red zone weapon. So, Jason Witten getting it done. Let's move on to the part where we get to sympathize with all of you out there. And this will be the vast majority of you, our duds of the week. At the quarterback position, we have the number 1 dud of the week, Deshaun Kaiser, my sit of the week for 1.88 fantasy points. So hopefully you took my advice and you didn't think, he had a really upcoming week 1, maybe he builds on it. No, sit him. And if you did, you were happy. 1.8 points, that's terrible. Brian Hoyer, 1.96. Case Keenum, 6.68. Surprise start, but, that's what happens. Jacoby Brissett, he did get the start for the Colts, 8.84 fantasy points. No surprise there. Andy Dalton, we already knew, 9.46. Really big letdown. Tyrod Taylor, 10.5. Guys, Tyrod Taylor, what are you doing with Tyrod going forward? If you're in a deeper league and you have him, I mean, I think he is safely droppable. I barely think he's streamable at this point.
It was a tough matchup.
It was.
I mean, you can't fault him with that. It was a really tough matchup, but going forward, I don't know if I'm going in there as my starter. He's a stream guy, to be honest.
Yeah, I streamed him the first week because of the hurricane took out my starter. So I went ahead and put him in. He actually played very well for me the first week. So, I mean, he's a streamable option. Would I put him on my team and keep him there? No, I don't think so. And it's not his fault. I'm a big Tyrod Taylor fan. It's that offense. They don't believe in him, and you can feel it when he plays.
I mean, they're calling for potentially a quarterback change. They're saying that he's that whole team has really lost the locker room. Some of the coaching staff, Tyrod Taylor, they're calling for Colin Kaepernick in Buffalo. It's this whole big thing. I mean, he passed for 125 yards. That's it. So, I mean, it's pretty bad. And he's got Denver next week. Then he's at Atlanta. Then he's got the Bengals. So, it's not the easiest run. But, I mean, once he gets past Denver, it gets a little bit easier. So, I don't know. We'll see. But if I have Tyrod Taylor, I'm definitely dropping him right now because there's no reason to have him on your team this week against the Bengals. He should not be your locked and loaded starter for the whole season. You should be if Tyrod Taylor is your starter, you should be streaming. And we talk more about streaming options over on our Patreon site. So, hey, go over there. Check it out. Other guys, Cam Newton. Cam Newton, I mean, I have been very low on Cam. And 2 weeks in a row, very, very subpar performances. 171 yards last week. He did get 2 touchdowns, but he didn't look very good. And then this past week, 228 yards, no touchdowns. So, I mean, I'm freaking out if I had Cam Newton right now. I don't know if this necessarily picks up, but he does have that kind of universal right-the-ship matchup coming up this coming week where they get to host the New Orleans Saints in Carolina. So, in theory, he could get going. It is divisional, though, so you have to throw all the stats and the trends out the window with divisional matchups. So, I don't know, you guys holding Cam for another week? Or are you benching him? Are you dropping him? Are you streaming him? What are you guys doing with Cam Newton right now? Either
laughing
or.
At the people that have him.
There you go.
I've been saying for 2 years now, don't pick up Cam Newton. He's too volatile. He had one fantastic year, but he's never proven that that's something that he can do on a consistent level. So I don't stream him. I don't use him. I don't like him. I don't even put him on my team.
You know what? I'm starting Cam this week. I'm starting him.
You start Cam Newton.
These last couple weeks, New Orleans has been giving up the cookies like they're freaking Krispy Kreme out here. Well, that's a donut shop, but they got served cookies too. But listen, it is absolutely ridiculous.
Wow.
I would start Blake Bortles.
Cookies, eh?
I would start Blake Bortles against the Saints. That's how confident I am.
Wow.
Well, he did score the same amount of points as Cam Newton did this week, so sure, why not?
There you go. So you're not at all scared about the fact that he lost his number 1 target?
No, No. That means other people need to step up, man. I mean, that's how it is. Next man up.
Yes, and we'll get to that very soon if you're wondering who that is, but you should probably know by now. So let's see. Other people let you down very fast. Mike Glennon, you shouldn't be starting him regardless. Jared Goff, probably weren't starting him. Eli Manning, again, we talked about this game pretty extensively already. 13.56 fantasy points. Garbage. Kirk Cousins, 13.86. And then Jameis Winston, surprisingly, even though they got the win, 14.46 fantasy points. Surprising stat line for a game that they won, I felt, pretty handily. What you guys kind of surprised to see the stat line?
Yeah, I mean, it was all defense, like CJ mentioned when we were off the air. It was all defense for them. Also, you got to remember, this was their first game of the year because they had that, they missed that first game. So they were kind of out of rhythm, I think. I think they right the ship with this next one, and we see a little bit more real Jameis Winston going forward.
I agree. Let's move on to the running back position, where we start off with two Philadelphia Eagles, actually. LeGarrette Blount, 0
What is going on with the
points. No rushing attempts, 1 reception. Why is he receiving passes? And he caught the ball for 0 yards. So I guess if you're in a PPR league, he got you 1 point. So I am saying universally, LeGarrette Blount has had a terrible preseason. He's had a very bad beginning of the season. He is droppable to me. CJ, you're the Eagles fan here, so you can weigh in. But for fantasy, I am cutting bait with LeGarrette Blount. Maybe try and trade him for name value, but I'm done with LeGarrette Blount.
I'm not mad at you if you do want to, get rid of him. I'm not mad. I mean, the coaching right now, the coach is just not getting him involved. And then as far as our blocking is just not there at the moment. So I'm not mad at you if you want to get rid of him, man. Even Wendell Smallwood, we're about to get to him. He not really cutting it right now either. It's just coaching. It's bad coaching right now and bad execution of the team. So I'm not mad at you either one you want to do.
He has. I mean, that one of these top fantasy options a year ago has 46 yards on the season through 2 weeks.
Oh my God.
It's bad. Yeah. And his only reception, I think, is because nobody was expecting him to catch the ball for that receiving touchdown in week 1. Everyone's like, "Wait, what? It wasn't a diversion?" So, I'm cutting bait with LeGarrette Blount. Wendell Smallwood also has been kind of underwhelming, 0.1 points. CJ, I mean, what's the plan in Philly? What shed some light here? Because I mean, obviously, I think Darren Sproles is kind of the guy now, but can he sustain that role?
I don't believe that he can. I mean, he's an older back. I appreciate everything Darren Sproles has done for Philly. I mean, he's done some great things in the running game and everything like that. But he's an older back, and you can't trust older backs to be able to be workhorses, especially at his size. I just don't agree with that. So now when it comes to what we're going to do in this backfield, I mean, a guy that I like and a guy that I think that's probably going to get his opportunity because he's younger, and I mean, what the heck else is Philly going to do? Is this guy named Corey Commett? I think you should go back and watch what he was doing in the preseason. He showed some highlights. He showed that he can be able to do some things. I think the Eagles are going to give him a shot, and what the hell? I mean, there's not anything else you could be able to do. I mean, throw the kid out there and see what happens.
At this point, what are you going to lose? So
right.
Yeah, we'll see.
Well, they need to start calling some running plays too. I mean. It's
bad coaching. Bad coaching.
You got to run the ball to run the ball, and they're not running the ball. So, yeah, it doesn't matter who's back there.
It's true. Thomas Rawls, 0.4 points. So, I mean, I will preface this by saying it was his first game back from injury.
Right, come on.
But
don't kill the guy.
He was not given the rock. He had no real opportunity here. CJ, you're by far and away the high. I mean, like I said, I like Thomas Rawls, but you're by far the highest on him. I mean, what was your takeaway here?
It was a tough matchup. First of all, it was division. I mean, I actually had this game going all Seattle, but they're struggling right now. They're kind of like the Eagles right now. Their offensive line is not that good, and right now, even though we liked Chris Carson last week, but there's still there's no holes there for them to be able to run and be able to take advantage. So they got question marks all over them, just like us right now.
I mean,
had to face a just monster of a defense in that Rams defense. They're playing lights out right now.
No, they played.
You mean the 49ers? And yes, they were.
Oh, I'm sorry. Were they playing the Niners? I thought they were playing the Rams. My bad.
No.
God.
Redskins played
I'm not
the
paying attention.
It's only a divisional game.
We're all struggling in this division over here. I'm frustrated.
Wow. Yeah.
Me, I'm in the drugs. Sorry.
5 attempts for 4 yards. I'll tell you a person that looked really good, though, Chris Carson. So, I mean, yet, like we've been talking about extensively, yet this is like a 4-headed backfield. It's something. We'll talk about that more in a little bit.
It's something.
It's not an ideal situation if you're an owner of anyone, and of course Eddie Lacy a healthy scratch for the week. So could be a lot of reasonings behind that, but or maybe they're just done with Eddie Lacy. Who knows? We don't know. We never know.
Illness. His main thing was illness. That was what they said before they actually made the cut. He was sick.
A likely excuse. So with that, let's move on. So we have other notable cuts, and we're going to fly through these a little bit quicker. Latavius Murray, no surprise there, 0.6 points. Jordan Howard, 0.7. Jordan freaking Howard.
Come on, Jordan.
Guys, if you drafted Jordan Howard in the first round, I mean, for starters, we were all saying don't do it, but I'm sorry, because you guys are in a bad situation. I don't know if you can move him for anything. Why am I blanking on the name?
Todd Gurley Award.
He will get the Todd Gurley Award. And, of course, as we're going to talk about soon, he's banged up. And I just don't think if he's going to be solely the first and second down back, they're going to be negative game scripts so much. I can't imagine he gets enough of a workload to stay really fantasy relevant. Definitely not returning on your first, second round value. So, I mean, this is something I was preaching all offseason to be worried about. And it's kind of, it is coming to fruition. So, it's concerning. Bilal Powell, 1.3. Jeremy Hill, 1.9. Kerwin Williams, a guy that we all preached caution on. And if you are a person like a guy in our league of record who spent 3/4 of his fab on him, 2.2 points, where Chris Johnson, CJ2K, looked a lot better than he did. Paul Perkins, 2.2. Yep. Ezekiel Elliott, 2.2. And a lot of people calling Ezekiel Elliott out for giving up on his team. I mean, there was a lot of plays where he was, the play was away from him or whatever, and he was just standing there while the ball was still out, hands on his hips, and not even looking like he was carrying. Are you guys concerned about Ezekiel Elliott? Do you think his head's not in the game right now with all the off-the-field stuff, or is this just an off week for him? I mean, he's a young player, but he had 8 yards and 14 receiving.
I'm pretty sure CJ mentioned something about this earlier, that he was concerned that this could get to Ezekiel Elliott's head, and I think that it absolutely came to fruition because he does not look like Ezekiel Elliott out there right now.
Nope. 9 attempts for 8 yards against the Broncos. A phenomenal pass defense, but they can be run on. That we have seen that. So, I mean, Melvin Gordon had a successful day against them in week 1, and that was divisional. So, something to worry about. I'm not jumping ship on Ezekiel Elliott. I know there's a lot of people that are freaking out about it. I would hold off. If you were brave enough to draft him with all this going on, you can give it another week, is all I'm saying. Besides him, Adrian Peterson, really no surprise here in a shootout. He has really no role in that offense, 2.6. DeMarco Murray, 2.8, which we'll talk about. He was dealing with some hamstring tightness. They were in a blowout, so no point for him to return. Isaiah Crowell, a guy who I also said my sit of the week, 3.7 points. Ravens defense is legit. Jonathan Stewart, 4 points. Joe Mixon, 4.1. He's not going to be very fantasy relevant until he gets that starting job and the carries that go with it, the attempts. LaShawn McCoy, 4.3. Tough matchup. Christian McCaffrey, 4.4. Dalvin Cook, 6.4. That was a big letdown, and it just goes to show you with a lot of the wide receivers we're going to mention, that entire Minnesota offense fell apart. It's when your starting quarterback goes down, everybody suffers. Yep. So, I mean, no surprise here that Dalvin Cook finished as a dud. And that's sad because I have him in my league of record, and he could have been very helpful to me. At the wide receiver position, and we got to start picking up the pace here. We have so much to get to. We're already halfway through the show. Jordy Nelson, 0 points. We'll get to that in the news. He's dealing with a quad injury. The timetable is still unknown. They're keeping that very, very hush-hush. Kenny Britt, 0.2 points. Seemingly droppable at this point. Corey Davis, 0.4 points. Really not too surprised about that. I know some people are thinking this had the opportunity to be a good matchup for him, but did not end up happening. Mike Wallace, 0.7. This is, even as a Ravens fan, I'm very confused about his usage. I mean, he was targeted deep a number of times, and him and Joe Flacco just weren't connecting. And I'm sure a big part of that actually is that Joe Flacco missed the preseason, so they're still trying to work on their timing and their connection. But Mike Wallace, if he's not being used for the short and more intermediate stuff, he's only being used deep. This is the possibility he's become more boom bust, because Jeremy Maclin is doing short to intermediate. They have a lot of guys doing short, a lot of tight ends, so I would expect this going forward. You never know what you're necessarily going to get out of Mike Wallace. It was a good matchup this week. Kenny Golladay, a guy who I've been very high on. I told a lot of people don't play him this week, and here you see why. 0.8 points. Tavon Austin, 0.8 as well. Corey Coleman, 0.9, and dealing with an injury, which we'll get to soon. Brandon Marshall, 1.7, like we talked about, still trying to find his spot in that offense. Dante Moncrief, 1.8, no surprise there. I have to apologize for this one. Larry Fitzgerald, who I had as my start of the week, 2.1 points. Jason, what happened here? This was a perfect matchup and situation. Everything was trending in his favor, and then everything went to J.J. Nelson.
Yeah, not looking his way. I think that part of it was they were so concerned with getting the ball down the field, because that was the big knock from last year, was you guys were not going down the field like we used to do. We're not going vertical. So this time he said, okay, we're going vertical. And so that's why he said saw so many passes going to J.J. Nelson. But it's got to even out, and I think that's part of this feeling out process, like what we've seen. We're going to see this team even out a little bit more, get themselves an established run game again, and then start throwing those intermediate to long passes.
I want to sincerely apologize for everyone out there. Everything was there. It was a perfect situation, and here it is just not working out. So, I take this personally. I want you to know that it's not something that I just brush off. I strive to give you guys great information and, good, reliable starts and sits. And so I'm actually really upset about this myself. Adam Thielen, 2.4. Ted Ginn, we talked about Adam Thielen, of course, part of that Minnesota passing offense. Quarterback goes down. Ted Ginn Jr. is starting to really concern me as well. Not really gelling with the offense there, but he's facing a new place, so maybe give it time. 2.4 points as well. Golden Tate, 2.5. It was a tough matchup. I told a lot of people to sit him. Pierre Garçon, 2.6. Tough matchup. Sammy Watkins, 3 points. Seemingly doesn't have a role in that offense yet either. Jared Goff only has eyes for Cooper Kupp. I love Cooper Kupp going forward. Jordan Matthews, 3 points. Kind of the same situation. Tyrod Taylor and him not connecting. Terrell Pryor still not making any type of chemistry. And this has been really what we've been hearing all offseason and now into the season, that him and Kirk Cousins just don't seem to be on the same page. Stephon Diggs, 3.1, same situation as all the other Minnesota pass catchers and really offensive players as a whole. Eric Decker, 3.2. Amari Cooper, 3.3. This is why we're so much higher as a show on Michael Crabtree, because Amari Cooper is incredibly boom bust. He is going to win you your week, or at least your positional battle, or he's going to lose it for you. There's really very little times that it's an in-between. Incredibly inconsistent. Odell Beckham Jr. was only good for 3.6, so no real surprise here. This was CJ's sit of the week. Good call, CJ. Like we all said, if he was even going to play or not, he definitely didn't look 100%. He was dropping balls, so wait a little while. Deshaun Jackson, 3.9. Brandon Cooks, 4. That was Odell Beckham Jr. was Jason's sit. Brandon Cooks was your start of the week, CJ, here at 4.3. Brandon
Cooks was my start of the week of the week.
Yeah, but I said, wait a minute, that doesn't sound right.
Yeah, that was me. That's my fault, guys. I apologize.
Brandon Cooks was your start of the week. Oh, it was. Oh no, what is wrong with me? I can't color things.
Oh my God.
See what happens? You see what happens?
Maybe it's because I just knew how high CJ has been on Brandon Cooks all offseason. And I just associate Brandon Cooks with CJ, who has now put up 2 dud weeks in a row. So everyone feasted in New England except for Brandon Cooks in the revenge game, which also I think proves that freaking Bill Belichick does not care about our fantasy teams. He didn't care about Brandon Cook's revenge game. He was using him, I guess, more as a decoy because they were expecting the revenge factor. Who knows? Doug Baldwin, 4.4 points. That Seattle offense needs to figure it out as well. The fact that Seattle almost lost in Seattle to the 49ers is amazing to me. It was divisional, though, so you have to, again, put that in there. Doug Baldwin, 4.4 points. T.Y. Hilton, my sit of the week, 4.9, so I was right there. So I redeemed myself maybe maybe a little bit there. Tyreek Hill, 4.9. Antonio Brown, a very pedestrian, 6.2. And A.J. Green, 6.7. So a lot of duds. And these are big name guys. A lot of these guys you were starting even in your standard size leagues. So, I mean, it was a bad week, and we all felt it. Don't feel like you are alone. At the tight end position, here we have Jimmy Graham, good for 0.1 point.
Wow.
He got banged up. He did leave the game. He came back later, but again, that Seattle Seahawks offense just is not figuring it out. Austin Hooper was Jason's start of the week, but he went for 0.7, and this I preach caution here. But this is why we have difference of opinions. So we'll see how that plays out going forward. Greg Olson, 1 point. Charles Clay, 2.3. It was a bad matchup. Cameron Brate, 2.4. No surprise. Jared Cook, 2.5. Julius Thomas, 2.6. That was a big letdown to me. It seemed like a decent matchup. Jesse James, 2.7. Kind of surprising as well. Zach Miller, 4.2. Tyler Eifert, 4.2. Kyle Rudolph, again, a pass catcher in Minnesota, 4.5. Jason's sit of the week, Martellus Bennett, 4.7. Good job, Jason. And CJ's sit of the week, Jordan Reed, 4.8. So we were pretty on it here, except for one or two slip-ups. So we'll do better going forward. That's all we can say. Let's move on to our top headlines from around the league. We're going to fire through these rapidly because we're already almost out of time. We just got through the studs and duds, but that's what happens when you have a huge week where everyone craps the bed. So starting with our top headlines with a league-wide headline. You may have heard this already. This news broke yesterday on Monday, but the NFL's emergency motion for a stay on Ezekiel Elliott's preliminary injunction has been denied. So now it is on to the Fifth Circuit Court. So, I mean, I would just love a week where we could not talk about Ezekiel Elliott's off-the-field issues. Is that so much to ask? We're not lawyers. We're fantasy analysts, but this impacts fantasy, so we have to talk about it. So, of course, when we know what this means, because this could still go in about 1 billion different directions. Well, I mean, realistically, like 3 or 4, but 1 billion different directions, we will let you know. Moving on to the quarterback position, where Indianapolis Colts quarterback Andrew Luck will miss week number 3 against the Cleveland Browns. So, man, this is not looking good. It's a bad situation. So if you drafted Andrew Luck, I mean, do you hold on to him or do you drop him? I mean, I would hold on to him because he's got to be coming back soon, and he's got some good matchups down the stretch, and they're not going to bring him back until he's right. So, I mean, I figure once he's startable, he should be startable for you as well. But, I mean, it's still a guessing game when that's going to be. You guys, I mean, I know I'm the highest out of the 3 of us, but do you guys feel differently, or are you on the same page? Is he droppable to you?
I don't know if he's droppable. I don't know about that. I think it's really it's not on the team. I think it's more on Andrew Luck and when he's ready. And right now, I just don't think that is the case. So he's a guy that if you believe in, you're just going to have to continue to store him on your bench and just ride the wave. I know it sucks, but that's reality.
Yep.
Yeah, my prediction was week 4 he'd be back. So I would still be okay with him on my team. If he started missing more games past week 4, yeah, I'd probably have to consider dropping him.
As you start getting into the bye weeks, it kind of changes things. So we'll see.
Yep.
Moving on, NFL Network's Tom Pelissero, I can never pronounce his name, and I hear it all the time. That's the worst part. He reports that Minnesota Vikings quarterback Sam Bradford's knee injury is a bone bruise. Now, we're hearing a lot from sources, though, saying that he is expected to play in week number 3. But, I mean, we've also heard things saying that he could miss 1 week, he could miss 6 weeks, soon, who really knows? So we'll see, but the belief right now is that he will play this week number 3, despite the head coach's statements. But, coaches, they do coach speak. That's what they do. Moving on to the running back position. We already kind of covered this already. Tennessee Titans running back DeMarco Murray was reportedly dealing with a tight hamstring during the second half. And just to break this down, the Tennessee Titans, they were dominating the Jacksonville Jaguars. They had no need to rush him back in or risk further injury. The team is still standing behind him, stating that he is their starter and their workhorse. So, I mean, good news going forward if you are a DeMarco Murray owner. Seems like it was no true injury. It was kind of like cramping, things of that nature. We'll see how that goes going forward. A rough start to the season, but I mean, still a lot of upside there. But hopefully, if you have him, maybe you have Derrick Henry as well, so you can be prepared for whatever situation happens. We already talked about this as well. Chicago Bears running back Jordan Howard, bad week. And then to top it all off, after the game was over, he was spotted in a sling. Of course, he was dealing with a shoulder injury going into the game, so this is bad news right here. So Tariq Cohen, that was the name I couldn't remember before, is looking like he might be looking at a serious uptick in workload, though he was not very productive on a per-touch basis and rushing either. So I think this is still Jordan Howard's job, but the question is how severely is he injured? We will update you as we learn more. Speaking to the press on Monday, Arizona Cardinals head coach Bruce Arians said, and we talked about this kind of already, that Chris Johnson could move up the depth chart for week number 3. Based on what I'm seeing, and Jason, feel free to weigh in if I'm wrong here, I'm thinking that it's gearing towards Chris Johnson as he gets back into game shape and he gets more integrated into the offense here. I think Chris Johnson is going to be the starting running back going forward, and I think the other guys are going to fill in as guys to spell him in specific roles. Are you seeing the same thing?
I'll tell you exactly what I did last week. I was going to start looking at Kerwin Williams possibly, and then I heard the news broke that they had re-signed Chris Johnson. I added Chris Johnson to every one of my leagues. The reason I did that, he's going to be the starter. You're absolutely right. Kerwin Williams is very, very good, but he's not good as the workhorse back. He's just like Andre Ellington. He cannot carry the load by himself. Chris Johnson's a 3-down back.
Yep.
He is going to eventually emerge as the starter.
It's exactly like you said. Chris Johnson is a 3-down back, and Andre Ellington is more of a pass-catching back, and Kerwin Williams he's a good running back, but he's not great in the passing game, and Chris Johnson does it all. So I think that he will become the starter there sooner rather than later. So I think he's the guy you should be targeting going forward. Also, Baltimore Ravens running back Terrence West is dealing with a soft tissue injury and is listed as day-to-day. Concerning, especially if you're an owner of Terrence West, because Buck Allen, I mean, for all the concern that we were talking about on Friday, we saw a lot of clarity, and something we'll talk about more going forward. Hint, hint, wink, wink, spoiler alert. Moving on to the wide receiver position, we kind of mentioned this as well. Basically, a lot of this news we kind of already covered in the studs and duds because we talked about the reasoning behind a lot of things that happened. Green Bay Packers wide receiver Jordy Nelson left the game on Sunday dealing with a quad injury. He did not return. Timetable is still unknown. They've been very quiet about his situation. In his absence, Randall Cobb did see a massive uptick in targets, though he also ended up having to leave the game with a shoulder injury. However, since then, he did get an MRI and it is reported as nothing major, nothing damaged. He's just considered day-to-day as well. So if Jordy Nelson is gone, expect Randall Cobb to really step in there because, I mean, as much as people may or may not like Devontae Adams, Randall Cobb and Jordy Nelson, they are the ones that have the rapport with Aaron Rodgers for years now. But it is funny to think, as much as I hate Devontae Adams, yet I'm the highest out of the three of us, who's the only one left standing? I hate everything. Depending on which one of these guys you own, look for it. I mean, Geronimo Allison and I'm blanking on the other guy's name, though they did step in. They've got other options there that they like. So again, we will monitor it going forward. I'm not rushing to pick up any of those guys yet because Randall Cobb looks like he will play, and we don't have a status on Jordy Nelson. Moving on to Arizona, where wide receiver John Brown is expected to miss week number 3, dealing with a quad injury. Now, we were talking about this before the show. Is he droppable? This sickle cell trait is, of course, one of the main things that this does is they don't recover, people who have this, don't recover from injury nearly as quickly or as efficiently as people that don't. So is John Brown droppable, Jason?
As much as it hurts my heart, yes. Unfortunately, John Brown is droppable. As I've mentioned many, many times, this sickle cell trait is not an injury that you get over. It's not something that goes away. He will have for the rest of his life, and he will be dealing with this for the rest of his life. And Bruce Arians is very transparent when it comes to these kinds of things. And he said, the bottom line with John Brown is he cannot stay healthy. If he can't stay healthy, he's not on the field. And even if he does stay healthy, he's going to be on the field sparingly because they're worried he's going to get hurt again. So, unfortunately, yes, I would say it is time to go ahead and look at dropping John Brown.
Yep. I mean, there are other pass-catching options in that offense, which could be good substitutions. But, John Brown as that number one guy, it's so risky. And the injury... We talked about it a lot this offseason. I know Jason and I, at least, we're both very high on John Brown. We love John Brown. The potential is amazing there, but this is, like you said, something that it's not a matter of overcoming. He's going to be dealing with this. It's going to affect him throughout his entire career and through his life. So, I mean, it's a condition. What are you going to do? For fantasy, you have to make the tough calls for your team. Also, in Cleveland, wide receiver Corey Coleman broke a bone in his hand. It will require surgery. At this point, he is expected to miss 6 to 8 weeks. So if you had him or in a PPR league or in a deeper league, feel free to drop him or move him into your reserve spot. He's going to be gone for at least the next 2 months. Last bit of news, tight end position. Carolina Panthers tight end Greg Olsen will undergo surgery on his broken right foot and is expected to miss 6 to 8 weeks. Now, if you were with us last offseason, CJ, Ryan, and I talked a lot about Sammy Watkins, who had a very similar situation where it's a serious problem that if you rush back, you'll just get it re-aggravated, and then you'll have to get a second surgery. Foot injuries are really tricky because you kind of need to walk on your foot. There's no real way of compensating around that. So Greg Olsen is very scary to me. I mean, it is still Greg Olsen. He is an Iron Man. He's only missed throughout his entire career. I think it was 1 or 2 games in his rookie season, and then he's had, I think it was like 8 or 9 seasons in a row of being healthy. So he should be able to bounce back. He's worth a stash. But, I mean, this is concerning. Foot injuries, they linger. Are you guys concerned at all about this long term, or are you thinking he'll be good to go within the time period?
I mean, it sucks for fantasy because that's eating up a lot of your weeks.
Oh, yeah.
So, and right now it's very, very slim pickings when it comes to the tight end position out there. So you got to deep dive, and hopefully you can, pick up like a Julius Thomas or, a Evan Ingram. You're going to have to take some shots on some guys that, that failed that's out there on that waiver wire.
Mm-hmm. New England Patriots tight end Rob Gronkowski is dealing with a groin injury. Kind of mentioned this before. He still put up a top 3 week with only being in there for 2 and I think it was like a quarter periods. Or, wow, 2 1/4 quarters. Periods are hockey. Come on, Griffin. But this was originally reported as a week-to-week injury. Originally, it was thought to be a back injury. That's how all over the place this was. It was a back injury, then was re-diagnosed and reported as a groin injury. Was week-to-week, but it has since been labeled as a minor injury. And Rob Gronkowski has even come out and said he claims to be day-to-day, not week-to-week. So we'll see how this plays out going forward. He is backed up by Dwayne Allen, and we all know how much anyone who follows fantasy football loves Dwayne Allen. So hurry back, Rob. Last bit of tight end news. Cincinnati Bengals tight end Tyler Eifert is dealing with both back and knee injuries. His status is 100% uncertain for week number 3 versus the Green Bay Packers. So this is the risk you take with Tyler Eifert. He is one of those guys who is always hurt. And then, of course, we have Jordan Reed, who left the game with a injury as well. He's got 2 or 3 injuries going on right now. His status is unknown for week number 4, or 3 rather. So with that, let's move.
Jordan Reed's hurt.
Jordan,
what news?
Shocking, right? So with that. Oh, man, we have like 3 minutes. We'll never get through this. Let's move on to our topic of the day, which is our top waiver wire targets for week number 3. Now, I'll start off, and a guy who I told you to pick up last week, and he only was picked up in about 9% of leagues, and that's because there was a lot of uncertainty, and I understand. I told you to pick him up, and then we kind of backpedaled on Friday, but now I'm back on board. Pick up Javorius Buck Allen. He could go by either one, depending on which website you are on. His given name is Javorius, but he goes by Buck. So depending on, again, it varies. He is only owned in 10.7% of leagues. And here's the thing. We were really concerned about Terrence West. But Terrence West was not on the field very much. Javorius Buck Allen, I'm giving his full name, Buck Allen was out there for 42 of the 68 offensive snaps that they had. He was catching the ball. He led the team in touches. He ran the ball. He looked great. We were very concerned about Michael Campanaro, a wide receiver, picking up some of that void. And Michael Campanaro was used, but incredibly sparingly, just as a change of pace to spell Buck Allen. And we were worried about Jeremy Langford, who was cut on Sunday. So Jeremy Langford's now a free agent again, in case you guys didn't hear. So I am all back on board with Buck Allen. If he is not owned, he should be in your league. Go ahead and pick him up because he's got quite the workload in front of him. I will preach caution, though. He's only going to be good until Danny Woodhead comes back. So this is a short-term fill-in, and then it will become very muddied once Woodhead gets back. But, I mean, this guy will help you in the coming weeks for sure. CJ, your guy.
My guy is, even though I love me some Samaje Perine, and I still do, but a guy that's been effective in this Redskin offense and that's been scoring touchdowns these last couple of weeks is Chris Thompson, a guy that gets involved in the passing game and a guy that Kirk Cousins trusts. And right now, that Redskins offense is dysfunctional, but a guy that's coming out and rising above the crap is Chris Thompson. So he's only owned in 5.7% of leagues, so he's widely available. Go out there and get him, man.
The thing that blows my mind is that Chris Thompson is a top 5 fantasy running back right now when all we were talking about was Rob Kelly and Samaje Perine, and here we have Chris freaking Thompson.
Yeah. So it's total Redskins, man. This is what they do.
Oh, it's typical Redskins all around. But, of course, this also has to do with the fact he's getting the touchdowns. So, that helps. Jason, your guy.
No surprise here. Chris Johnson over in Arizona. As I mentioned, I went out and picked this guy up immediately as soon as I heard they were signing him. He is a starting running back. He played extremely well last year when he filled in, and he's played extremely well the year before when he filled in. So he's always good when he comes back. He's going to be the starter. He's going to get the touches, and I think he is going to help to right the ship in Arizona. He's only owned at 2.6% of leagues, so he's probably available. Go out, get him, and you may have to stash him for a week. But I think he's going to start putting up some good numbers shortly.
I love it. Moving on to the wide receiver position. My top pickup of the week is Cooper Kupp. Snatch him from you, CJ. Cooper Kupp, he's gone up in a good percent of leagues, but he's still only owned in 20.9% of leagues. How is that possible? He is a massive PPR option, and he is the first and second and sometimes even third read for Jared Goff. And, of course, we've all heard the stories about how Cooper Kupp, he lived with Jared Goff, and, they've got this amazing friendship and rapport, and, whether you take stock in that or not is neither here nor there, but if you watch the tape, he is staring down Kupp. I mean, and this is on a team where he has Tavon Austin, he has Sammy Watkins, he's got all these other very high-profile wide receivers who are, of course, drawing coverage, keeping Kupp open. I think that Kupp, especially as they both get better going forward, because, Goff is still very raw and Cooper Kupp is a rookie, but I think that this is becoming a very good quarterback wide receiver combo right here, and I like the upside of Kupp season long. So he's a guy I'm definitely trying to pick up, not necessarily for any particular matchup, but for the whole season. So go grab him if you can.
Thief. All right, my guy that
he's on my team in our expert league. I don't want to hear it.
And you stole him from me.
Nah.
All right, and my guy is Allen Hurns. Look, I dislike everything about Jacksonville, but hey, look, Allen Robinson has gone down. Somebody's got to catch this ball. Allen Hurns, he had a big game this past week. So, hey, it was good. So if you need some help in the wide receiver position, go pick up Allen Hurns. He's only owned in 4.4% of leagues, so he's widely available. Go get him.
Jason?
Yeah, I like it. I hate to do two Cardinals in a single thing, but
no, you don't.
Just kind of the way the cards fell to me. J.J. Nelson played fantastic this week, 120 yards. He actually led all wide receivers in yardage this week, 120 yards and a touchdown. This guy is going to be filling that void that John Brown is leaving behind. Brown will still be around and available, but I think J.J. Nelson is going to crawl up the depth chart and just be the number 2 guy from here on out. So I would definitely grab him if you can, put him on your bench. He's going to be worthy of a start here very soon.
Yeah, I like it. I mean, J.J. Nelson's so good. All right, so with that, let's move on to our tight ends. And, especially with John Brown going down. That's insane. All right, tight ends, we have Benjamin Watson. I mean, I had to do a homer pick too, I guess. Actually, no, that's 2 for me. I'm as bad as Jason. Oh, no. Benjamin Watson. This is a guy who's only owned in 0.5% of leagues. And here's the thing. Benjamin Watson, he was a fantasy, top 10 option back in 2015, went to the Ravens in 2016, tore his Achilles, missed the season. So most people kind of forgot about him. Well, he's back on a team that targeted, and, Dennis Pitta led all tight ends last year in receptions. Joe Flacco loves to use his tight end. In fact, he features them. His tight ends is his go-to target in the short and intermediate routes, if not dumping it off to his running back. Benjamin Watson had a ton of targets this past week, and I think that if he can stay healthy, which he seems to be, back and ready and rearing and good to go, and a great pass-catching tight end, I see no reason why he can't keep up this production. Even with all the other tight ends in Baltimore, I think that they're distractions. They run a lot of two tight end sets. I think Benjamin Watson is a great option for PPR and a great threat in the red zone. And so if you are really hurting at tight end, or if you're in a two tight end league, this is a sneaky pickup that you guys can probably grab right now, who's only owned, again, in 0.5% of leagues. So go grab him.
Well, listen, you already know the guy that I'm talking about when it comes to tight end position. A guy I will continue to preach until he's no longer available for me to talk about. Evan Ingram, look what the kid did last night, man. The man was catching balls, caught a touchdown, even in that trash of an offense of the Giants. Listen, go get this man. You might have to stash him. It's okay. I mean, there's nothing wrong with hiding some gold in your closet, man, and bringing it back out to get appraised. Put that man in your closet, put it on your bench, and just wait for the perfect moment. This week is not a good week. Eagles are good against tight ends, but just stash him, man.
Yeah, I like it. My guy is David Njoku. I actually have him on my bench. I picked him up, had him on my bench, and he had a really nice week this week. I didn't have him starting, unfortunately, but he played really well. So this is a guy that's going to continue to do better and come on a little bit, and I expect to see him do well against good matchups. So definitely somebody that you should put on your bench.
Yeah, I like it. Seth Duvall, he kind of scares me there, but yeah, David Njoku, he's gotten the red zone target, so I like it. All right, so with that, we got to hurry up and get out of here. So that's going to do it for us today. Please make sure you guys tune in on Friday when we will be telling you all of our starts and sits for week number 3. As always, please make sure you guys subscribe. We're here every single Tuesday and Friday throughout the off-season, throughout the season, all year long, and lots of good stuff. Hopefully you guys enjoy what we do. We know we enjoy doing it for you. We're going to bring home some serious fantasy titles. That's why we do what we do. You can follow us on Facebook at facebook.com/thefantasyfootballfanatics. And again, if you want breaking news as it breaks, follow us on Twitter at the FF Fanatics. Also the best place to submit your questions. Or you can follow us individually. I'm at GPalmerFFF. CJ's at CJ Hickman89, and Jason is at Jason Cabrera 13. And as always, please make sure you guys support the show. If you want us to help, or if you want to help us, I should say, keep these lights on, keep doing what we're doing, get yourself bonus perks along the way. It's patreon.com/thefantasyfootballfanatics. You will not regret it. So with that, any parting thoughts before we sign off, guys?
Guys, stay away from them bridges, man. It's only week 2. It's not over, except for Jason.
Wow. I mean, I will say, guys, I've been in leagues where I've had bad starts. We've all been there. I've had weeks where I've started off 0-4, 1-5 even, and all the way into week 6, and I've come back, made the playoffs. You just have to get into the dance, and anything can happen. So it's possible.
I went 0. If you remember, CJ, I went 0-4 last year to start the season, and ended up winning the title. So
see, there you go. And I'm messing with you. I'm just messing.
I don't remember that, really. Wow, kudos to you, Jason. All right. So we are out of here, everyone. Take care. Have a great week. We will see you on Friday. Bye.
Life in the fast lane, moving at the speed of life, and I can't slow down.
Isaiah Crowell, crap together.
But I'm almost at the finish line, so I can't stop now. I don't really know where I'm headed, 'cause I'm enjoying.
He's got a good matchup this week.
Road till I drop and ride till I die. I'm living life in the fast
Just waiting for a breakout, man. He needs one good game.
Life in the fast lane.
All he needs, one good game.